Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Progress America Unfiltered. It's me, Tyler, and I'm here today with Rhett and Linda to talk about all things Kevin McCarthy, taxes, and what in the name of the House of Commons is going on with Republicans in Congress. So, to start, Linda, I have been hearing that Kevin McCarthy is scheming once again to do some kind of budget commission. Can you tell me a little bit about what this means and what he's trying to do?
Sure. So, on the heels of the debt ceiling deal, which, thanks to President Biden and Democrats, largely protected Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, despite Republicans really wanting to include cuts in there, McCarthy was getting a lot of protests from his party saying, oh, this didn't make nearly big enough cuts to the programs people rely on. So, he went on Fox News to say, don't worry, I'm going to set up a special bipartisan commission aimed at cutting Social Security and Medicare, and my goal is to make a lot of people uncomfortable. And he seemed to think by saying it on Fox News that only his friends were going to hear it and that nobody else was going to notice. And he even forgot that a lot of Fox News' own audience is old folks as well. But this did end up getting quite a bit of attention, probably not from people that Kevin McCarthy thought would notice. And the biggest thing is that he's very adamant that this commission is going to be bipartisan and have Democrats on it. What he wants is for Democrats to go behind closed doors with Republicans, agree on cuts, and then the public doesn't know who to blame. And what Democrats need to do is say, no, we're not going to have anything to do with this. You can go do it yourself, and just universally boycott the commission.
Absolutely. And I want to hear your thoughts on this, Rhett, but I can't help but think of, I just have to say I told you so a little bit, not to you all, because we told them so, but we have to say I told you so to the viewers a little bit, because way back when we first started this show and we were talking about McCarthy and his 15 failed speaker votes, and we talked about how it was very clear that he lacked a backbone. It was very clear that he would do or say whatever was necessary to get him in power. And this is just the latest example of this. It's very clear that one, if we remember correctly, he set himself up for failure in the sense that, it just takes one person from his party to start a vote to oust him. So he's already walking a tightrope here. And it's clear that the more extreme members of the Republican Party aren't happy with a debt ceiling vote that doesn't strip away the earned benefits of millions of Americans. So now he's trying to tiptoe that line of not actually doing that, because like you said, Linda, he knows that his audience and his voters of elderly people wouldn't actually want that. The people who tend to vote Republican, but he also has to appeal to his more right-wing factions of the party. So it's really interesting. This is definitely an I told you so moment. I think we've kind of got him with his hands painted red and in the cookie jar. But Rhett, do you have any thoughts on this commission and how Republicans are trying to take away our Social Security and Medicaid?
Absolutely. So I really feel like there is so much power in just the media, in the public knowledge surrounding who is voting which way on these specific issues. So as Linda mentioned, this behind the scenes kind of action to cut Social Security and Medicare would really just provide these politicians with just this loophole to get away scot-free from decisions that are going to harm so many people. And I think this is just kind of like tied into the Republican agenda of just moving behind closed doors, moving very swiftly, quietly to harm so many people, and really just taking the rug out from under them in ways that people aren't really going to feel, even immediately, but down the line as well. Linda, you mentioned the older audience that watches Fox News, and how it was kind of an apparent contrast between what Kevin McCarthy was saying and how it's going to harm them. It's just really a very scary situation when we know that just the Republican leadership is seeking to find these back channels to really harm people. And they know that their views are unpopular. They know that their extremism is very scary. What their extremism actually means in terms of if that was to be enacted and like they were actually to be able to govern on the things that they say they were going to do or hope to do, they know how many people would hurt, how many people in their base would hurt, how many people would realize that what they voted for is actually so against their own interest. And so I think that's why it's so important that we continue to put a platform out here like we're doing on this channel to say, hey, you know what, Kevin McCarthy, you're not going to get away with this. We're going to hold you to account when it comes to these things. As Tyler mentioned, throw back to when we covered the speaker votes, 15 votes. I mean, that was at the very beginning of this channel. And I think just like as we've seen Kevin McCarthy's speakership play out through the kind of the longevity of this channel, really this channel kind of shares a similar birth date with Kevin McCarthy's speakership. And we did a few different recordings at first too. So like we also had some failed attempts to get this show on the road. But unfortunately for him, we got a lot better at this show than he got at being a Speaker of the House.
Yeah, and hopefully we long outlast his speakership. So one thing I do want to kind of segue into that I think is important and that we can't lose sight of when we talk about these things, the reason that, and it's my favorite topic, I talk about it all the time, we're going to talk about taxes. So the reason that Kevin McCarthy and right-wing Republicans are trying so hard to make cuts to social programs and things that Americans have been contributing to basically since they started working is so that they can continue to hand their wealthy friends tax cuts and tax loopholes and tax breaks so that instead of using their taxes to pay for these things and taxes from corporations who pay less than teachers, they force the American people to bear the burden instead of their wealthy friends. So, Linda, do you want to talk to us a tiny bit about the 2017 Trump tax cuts, how they play into all of this, and why Republicans don't seem to think taxes can help lessen the deficit, but, spending cuts can?
Yeah, so this is just really the biggest evidence that Republicans don't care about the deficit at all. So this week they introduced tax cuts that would renew some expired tax breaks from the wealthy from the 2017 Trump tax cut law, and then even create additional provisions tilted in favor of the ultra wealthy corporations and private equity. And so if this bill became law, it would give the richest 1% an average tax cut next year of over $16,000, whereas the poorest Americans would essentially receive a $0 tax cut or average of $40, so might as well be. Foreign investors would get $24 billion in U.S. tax savings, and this is really just a giveaway to special interest. It's the biggest reason that the Republican Party exists. Like, Trump is actually my favorite example of that. He ran on, I'm different, I'm a populist, I'm going to drain the swamp, and I'm fighting for you. I'm not like those other Republicans. And then once he got into office, his signature legislative achievement ended up being a giant tax cut for the wealthy. So this is all the Republicans. It's what they want to do. And they do not care about the deficit. They care about reaching into our pockets and stealing our money.
Yeah, and it's sickening. As a person who I will always go on a rant/vendetta about taxes because I am still going through the same tax struggles I have been going through since we started this show earlier this year. This tax system is so confusing. It is not set up to help everyday people. It is set up to benefit the wealthy. I'm quite literally going through my fourth revision/amendment of my taxes because of how confusing this entire system is and getting bills that I don't understand where they're coming from and things like that. And so things like this just really, really irritate me because here I am, a normal person who does not make a significant amount of money, being subjected to the full force of the federal and state governments trying to rake everything that I am worth out of me. Meanwhile, we have the Trump 2017 tax cuts that hurt middle class and working class people like myself, and benefited wealthy corporations. And they're still trying to take more from the system. So it's just extremely frustrating to me. But Rhett, do you have any thoughts on taxes and how that plays into the entire, deficit conversation?
Yeah, it's like deficit is bad, says the Republicans. But let's continue to give a handout to our friends because those are our donors, man. We love them. We love to give them free money and to make sure that they're not giving their fair share. It just the logic is so bad that it could only be thought of as by a Republican politician, right? That's kind of the standard for how bad the logic is. There's just no sort of recipe here for any sort of actual understanding, just cause and effect relationship of what it means to give a tax break like they're doing to what it means for the income of this country. Just really disgusting stuff there. But I, again, don't really feel that this political party is meant to be something that is a political governance system. It's made to be something that is just kind of the political embodiment of Wall Street, the political embodiment of the far right, the political embodiment of big banks, people that are just going to get away with taking advantage of the system time and time again and pushing people further down from what is the quote unquote American dream.
Absolutely. I think, we hear it all the time, but it really is the party of rules for thee and not for me, which we've seen time and time again, which kind of brings me to the last little segment of today's show. For a party that is seemingly united in their distaste for anything that would help the American people, they are truly, truly not, they're showing us through a lot of this that they are not a united front, that they do not even feel the need to coalesce together to, ensure their dastardly deeds are accomplished. And so we're seeing the factions continue to split off, continue to fracture, especially through these debt negotiations. We know that a lot of people who are a lot further on the right were unhappy with the lack of extreme cuts. And, I'm sure that people who are more centrist or in more difficult districts are fed up with these conversations that continue to circle back to cutting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, things that they know that their constituents rely on. So for last thoughts, do we want to just talk about, Linda, I'll start with you, the ways that these Republicans are just kind of infighting and not really even supporting each other in their own end goals?
Yeah, so Kevin McCarthy, right after the debt limit deal, he's riding really high in the mainstream media. They're like, oh, look, everyone underestimated Kevin McCarthy. He definitely has control of his caucus. And then Lauren Boebert and a group of other ultra-MAGA Republicans decided to take Kevin down a peg and just use procedural tactics to stop all the business on the House floor for a week, which ended up blocking like a bunch of messaging bills that they actually supported, like a whole thing on gas stoves. And these are all bills that are dead on arrival in the Democratic control Senate anyway, but they just wanted to make a point to say, you're not in charge, Kevin, we are. And so, yeah, Republicans very much in a state of chaos. And even though right now it's mostly about messaging bills, this could have real implications down the road, because what the debt limit deal was it included, is it set a top line level of spending for next year, but the House and Senate still need to figure out like how much different agencies are going to get. And the ultra MAGA folks said that they just disagree with that top line level of spending. They want it to be lower. And so they've basically convinced Kevin McCarthy to say, oh, that debt limit deal that I agreed to? Just kidding. We're going to starve programs, spend an even lower amount. But the thing is, the deal had provisions for that, for what happens if they can't come to an agreement. And it would basically just lead to automatic funding levels for some of these programs. It would also lead to a big cut in defense, which a lot of Senate Republicans are not happy about. So now there's the chance of Republican disarray between the House and Senate too. And my message to Democrats would be, you can see a lot of infighting among the Republicans, so don't bail them out. Show that Democrats are the united party, and we're just going to let their chaos play out and stand united and work to get as much funding for these vital programs as possible out of this chaos.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said that, Linda. Literally, do not bail them out. Do not press go. If you are a Democrat in Congress right now, just kick your feet up, sit back, and let them continue to do what they do, which is implode. And we need to ensure, kind of like what you were saying, Rhett, earlier, let them implode publicly. Don't let them work this out behind closed doors, because that doesn't benefit anyone. Allow the American people to see, some of the American people to see the people that they have voted into office and see what they're actually doing and what they're actually interested in. So glad that you said that, Linda. Rhett, do you have any thoughts on this? Any last thoughts on Republican infighting?
Yeah, I mean, I would just love to see a TED Talk of just any of these Republicans in the House of Representatives trying to explain the political kind of choices that they're making here. Like, any viewer at home that sees the complete chaos that these people have dispelled in the House of Representatives would be able to say, you know what, this just doesn't seem like good politics. It doesn't even seem like good behavior to be playing out publicly. Like, if I was growing up, if I was acting like this in public, fighting, being loud, being annoying, my mom would say, you know what, save that for being at home. These people just are not house trained like that, I guess, or I don't even know. It's just so weird that they just do not have that same kind of those manners, that understanding, that public kind of persona that comes with being a politician. They don't understand that, what it means to govern or any of it. So it's really disappointing, but not surprising, sadly.
Yeah, I think the difference comes from understanding when you are governing for other people or governing to exercise your own power. And I think that this is what we end up seeing most of the time with these silly squabbles or these fights to, get cuts for the rich and do nothing for everyone else. They're fighting for their own power. They're not fighting to actually govern and represent the people who elected them, which is really disappointing to see. But Linda, Rhett, any last thoughts before we wrap this episode up? All right. Well, vote him out. Yeah, 2024 is around the corner. It really is. So on that note, thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you follow us on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, wherever you can find Progress America Unfiltered. And we will see you next time. Bye.